Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. The fact that someone has felt inspired enough to make a song out of one of my videos or about the characters in my videos is amazing. So, where were we? Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Habitual Line Crosser, and today we're gonna do this on the special too. This is a special. You want to tell them? Okay. Are there zombies outside? Are there? I have no idea what you're saying. Your breath smells like an anus. It's probably your butthole. Love you, bud. We have a bit of a special one here today, folks, on today's USA versus the world. So today, we're not talking about any specific country. No, we're not. This is a Halloween special of USA versus the world. And we're going to talk about a zombie apocalypse. Now you might be asking, HLC, why are you not in a Halloween costume for your Halloween special? I'll have you know, I am wearing my costume right now. I am going this Halloween as a depressed middle-aged man. Think I nailed it. Maybe in a couple years I'll go as a homeless veteran. I don't feel good about that. But first, a word from today's video sponsor. Today's video sponsor is Delete Me. Oh, lighting. Oh, that's much better. Identity theft is an increasing threat. This year alone, the FTC has received over 1.4 million reports of identity theft. And according to the FBI, cybercrime losses are around $10.2 billion. Last year, it was $6.9 billion. So you can see that this is an exponential problem. Data brokers from all over the world are buying and selling your information without you knowing about it. This includes your cell phone number, your business, your residence, your name. Let's not forget the threat of being harassed, doxxed, or even stalked on the internet when expressing any opinion, or as I like to call it, turn-based arguing. That's why I personally trust Delete Me. Over the last 13 years, they've designed tried and true ways of removing your personal information from these data broker sites. They remove them from over 750 different sites. Look, you don't have to be a social media content creator or a public figure to want to protect you and your family's private information. So right now, you can click the link in the description of this video or use the promo code HABITUAL at https://joindeleteme.com. You can also scan this QR code to take you there directly. Remember, if you use the promo code HABITUAL at checkout, you get 20% off of your order. Thanks again, Delete Me, for sponsoring this video. To get your data removed off the internet, click the link in the description of this video and also get 20% off. Back to the show. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. So on this episode, we're going to talk about the zombie apocalypse. Now, we have a couple of different scenarios here, and the type of zombie that I'm going to be focusing on, and some of you may get upset about this. No, it's not going to be Romero zombies. No, it's not going to be voodoo zombies. We're going with the Hollywood zombies, specifically the 28 Days Later zombies. Because I'm going to be totally frank with you, I don't like scary shit. I'm not a fan of spooky movies. Never been a fan of them. I mean, I've seen some of the classics, I guess you call them a creature feature, the Jasons, the Halloween videos with Michael Myers. Not a big Freddy Krueger fan, but I love zombie movies. And I will tell you, out of everyone that I've ever seen, 28 Days Later terrified me more than any of them. That shit's scary. So, turns out they actually have a wiki about the zombies from 28 Days Later. And I went down the rabbit hole and I got a lot of possibilities. I do want to note some things. Now, the way we're going to look at this is the first scenario is that it is a bioweapon dropped by somebody else into a populated area. The second version is that it is kind of like the movie, was it not Contagion? I can't remember the name of the movie. It came across like an STD, but we're going to have to take some artistic liberties there because hers, it took like weeks to take over her body, which is actually more realistic. Well, I want to talk about exactly how we would defend against this. So, this video is going to be significantly shorter than some of my other ones because I'm not going to have to go down like, well, the zombies have this. They have a lot of people. That's what they have on their side of the house. We have a lot of everything else. But I will tell you, in a zombie apocalypse, success is not measured by the amount of firepower that you have. Now, everyone who's ever watched a zombie movie is familiar with Zombieland. Love that movie. First one, phenomenal. Second one, I was offended by because it was just so far from from where they had come from. Like, I could not get behind Zombieland 2. I love the characters. Zombieland 1 is going to go down as the fucking GOAT when it comes to zombie movies. But everyone knows rule number 1 is cardio. Not when you're an American, okay? Look, I disagree adamantly with his rule number 1. I really do. I'm sorry. And bear with me here. My rule number 1 is anything is a weapon. I'm sitting here. Let's just ignore the fact that I have, firearms, ammunition, and a small stockpile here in my house. But let's just look around the room. Let me see. This chair. I could break off one of the arms of this chair and try and stab a zombie with that. I have this metal bottle here. I could ping somebody in the head with that. I have this glass bottle here. I could smash that over something and then use it as a stabby stab. So rule number 1 in the zombie apocalypse for me is anything is a weapon. Everything. I'll hit a motherfucker with another motherfucker, right? Like if you're small, I'm sorry. If you're... I shouldn't take this stand. I'm going to just tell you what I was going to say because I don't want you guys to miss out on the joke. If you're a manlet, I will swing you at another grown, adult. And yeah. So when we're first looking at the bioweapon version, it would probably be in the form of a dropped bomb that has some kind of liquid inside of it. Because for the 28 Days Later zombies, they fall victim to something called the rage virus. Now, in the movie, the rage virus is transmitted because some fucking tree huggers are trying to help a chimpanzee, and they help it escape from captivity, and they feel so good about themselves. Well, the chimpanzee has the rage virus. And the rage virus, the way it works, is all you have to do is come into contact with another thing's fluid, an infected person or creature's bodily fluids. This can be spit, vomit, blood, anything comes into contact with you. It takes over your body in a matter of seconds. Understandably, that's not realistic. There's not a virus in the world that is capable of doing anything like that. Plus, the human metabolism it just can't sustain those type of bodily changes that quickly. So we're going to have to take some liberties here. And I was looking at it like, if I was creating this as a bioweapon, what would I want to do and how would I want to make it work? So I started out with a view of the American population density. Now, when it comes to American population density, you'll notice that the East Coast and the East in general are far more populated than the Midwest or the West Coast. The West Coast does have like certain city centers, your LA, your Seattle, like there are those areas there, but compared to the East Coast, they're spaced far apart. And that becomes a bit of an issue. So when someone is infected with the rage virus, it increases their level of aggression. It's almost like rabies. Their aggression goes through the roof. Now, the parts of their brain that stop functioning are the ones that self-preservation and, hunger. Like, you're hungry, yes. Like, it wants to infect other things. This virus specifically is all about transmission. It wants to infect more things. Matter of fact, in several occasions in the movies, we saw... while it was feeding on a human or something else, if it died, if whatever it was feeding on died, it moved on to something that wasn't infected. These things also have the capability of being able to vault over objects, move through doors. They can solve simple puzzles. They also have a very heightened sense of smell, and they can smell the non-infected, and that's what they primarily hunt for, is the non-infected. Their goal, the goal of this virus is to transmit as much as it possibly can. Interesting enough, they also have a bit of a hive mind mentality, meaning if one of them finds an uninfected, the rest of them will gather in that area and try and help them or help each other get to the uninfected individual. They will also hide amongst the dead. We saw this in, I believe it was the second movie, that they will lay in wait and ambush uninfected. The major benefit of this type of zombie is they're not like a lot of the other ones, especially the Romero zombies, that will just continue to move after they're dead. These are actual living beings. So anything that would kill a human could kill one of these zombies. That's gunfire, stabbings, explosives, being hit by a car. I mean, we see all sorts of things in these movies. So in the form of a bioweapon, I would start with the East and West Coast. And the reason for this is because these zombies, number one, cannot swim. So doing anything in anywhere that has large bodies of water kind of reduces that. And they're not going to leave the country because they cannot get out through the oceans. They can end up in Canada, they can end up in Mexico, but they will not be able to go across the oceans. They do understand water. They can wade through water. However, when trying to swim, they cannot, and they will, in fact, drown. That being said, they're also susceptible to hot and cold, two of which that the United States, depending on the time of the year, experiences in extremes. Okay, like we have in my USA versus the World United Kingdom, I stated that the coldest recorded temperature in the lower 48, this is not Alaska, is in Montana, and it was a minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, the hottest was in Death Valley, and it was 134 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, when I was looking at this as a bioweapon, I was like, well, what if they just drop the bioweapon on the East Coast? Now, I'm pretty confident that it could handle majority of the East Coast because of population density. Now, for those of you who live in the East and you're like, well, we have plenty of firearms. Yeah, a firearm will help in certain capacities. But when you're looking at 10,000, 100,000, a million of these things sprinting at you, you're going to be in a world of trouble with your regular AR, or hell, even some of you that have belt feds and full autos and things like that. There's so much happening so quickly. So again, the problem with starting in the East Coast and allowing it to just move its way across the United States is the American Midwest. Now, looking at population density, the Midwest is quite wide open. There's a lot of open spaces in there. These things do not have the instinct that they need to eat, so they will starve, and that's the whole premise of 28 days later, is that within 28 days, they will starve to death or to the point that they can no longer move. Meanwhile, they will ignore being shot in the arm, the leg, like anything that is not lethal, they will absolutely ignore it. So when I looked at the map of the United States, I was like, well, if we dropped it in New York, how long would it take these things to get over to California? Now, the average human can travel about 20 miles per day. If they trained hard, about 30 miles. Considering these things are running off of nothing but adrenaline and like hunger and hatred, they could probably move about 30 miles a day. So I measured that, and it's about, 2,400 miles, give or take, well, 2,500 and some change. And that equates to 83 days to get across. So, well, if you starve to death in 28 days, those that start are not going to finish. And hopefully they can continue to build up new infected along the way to eventually get over there. But by that time, you've given the US such a time to prepare and build up a base of fire with our amount of firepower that we have that it's not really going to be effective either way. But then we also have to look at it as if Americans will take it fucking seriously. I'm just being real with you. So I did some research, and it turns out that 42% of Americans never followed any COVID precautions at all throughout the entire pandemic, or they lied about following COVID precautions. That's 4 out of 10 Americans just didn't really believe it was real. The vast majority of those individuals happen to be under the age of 60. Now, I don't think people fully understand how close we are to quite literally famine in most of the United States. We're about 2 weeks of no trucking, no trains, no logistics, away from people in droves starving to death and fighting each other over resources of any kind. I don't know if you guys know that. So I did some research, and somebody, concluded a study, and based off of the relevant information they were able to find, it says that in the first 6 months, the United States population will go from 330 million down to about 100 million. After the end of the first year, it would be down to 15 million. And at the end of 2 years, we will be looking at around 1 million Americans that are still left because they can sustain themselves and they have the survival skills to be able to do those things. Those numbers are based off of like the United States economy collapsing. That's not based off of a rage virus that is just pouring across the United States and killing people. Now, if you're going to drop this bioweapon in those 2 locations, I would highly encourage you to use mid to late summer. And the reason I would ask you to use mid to late summer is because early spring in the north, you're still looking at possible exposure and freezing to death overnight for some of these infected. The hard part is the American Southwest gets really hot and really dry. These things are also susceptible to those kind of hot and dry temperatures. But the majority of the United States deals with more cold temperatures being dangerous than they do hot temperatures being dangerous. Because quite literally, if you're in like Montana, New York, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Minnesota, hell, even like Idaho and Washington, any of those kind of northern states, Colorado, well, Colorado's not really northern, it's more central, Wyoming. I don't know if you know this, but like 20, 30 degrees overnight, if you're not prepared for it, can kill you very, very quickly. So all you have to do is really wait till the first freeze, and your survival is almost completely assured, at least from the zombie aspect of this fight. Another potential benefit of this virus is that it does not take a long amount of time to infect. Some of the other zombie viruses you see out there, someone will get bit and it takes a couple of days for them to turn. This is almost instantaneous. And this is important because some people will try to hide their illness. We've seen this in just a plethora of movies. Someone gets bit, they just keep themselves covered and they're like, I'm just not going to tell anybody until it gets really bad. You don't do that. You don't do that at all. So having to quarantine humans for a long period of time isn't really going to be a factor within this. If we have some of the longer lasting and the slower turning viruses that are out there when it comes to zombies, yeah, you're going to have to quarantine people for 24 to 48 hours, see if they turn. If they don't turn, then you can integrate them into society. These things also prefer darkness. They prefer dark areas. They are more active at night. And I will tell you, from being down in Louisiana, I have never experienced darkness like the Louisiana jungle. Night vision doesn't mean shit in the Louisiana jungle. It is so unbelievably fucking dark out there. But we go back to the drawback. This virus doesn't just affect humans. It affects all kinds of animals. So if a human who's infected jumps into a tiger cage at the zoo as people are running away, and even if the tiger kills them, if the tiger bites them, you now have a tiger infected with the rage virus. Now, you might be able to outrun your friends, you might be able to fight off your friends, but a 500-pound feline with like 3-inch teeth chasing you, sorry bro, you're on your own. That's not to mention getting deer infected, getting bobcats infected, getting mountain lions infected, getting bears infected, badgers, you name it. The animal kingdom becomes a whole lot scarier when you infect them with something like this. Hell, even our canine companions. Knox, I don't think I'd be able to put you down if you were a zombie, dude. I'd have to put myself down too. You have squish face. You know no one takes you serious with squish face? Just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyways, now we're going to get a little bit dark. The people who end up surviving this are ones who, number one, they're far away from others in society. Number two, they have the skills, the knowledge, and the preparedness to be able to do these things and take care of themselves and each other. If you bring nothing to the table in a survival situation, you're not an asset. You're a liability. And then people with disabilities. It sucks. It's the one part that like no zombie movie really messes with is like people in wheelchairs or people in hospitals, people that are slow to move and, you know, not really mobile, the elderly. Those are going to be the ones that are at an increased risk. And I'm going to be real with you. When I went down the rabbit hole of knowledge about these types of zombies, I wanted to ask the question. Now, we do know that in some cases they will avoid people. We saw that in World War Z, where certain people infected with certain things they would avoid. Don't really see that in the 28 Days Later zombies. There's one in the first movie. There's a woman who's a carrier, and she infects her husband, and her husband proceeds to try and eat her, even though she's a known carrier. So it's a little bit different there, but I feel bad, but if somebody ever finds my Google and looks up my fucking search history, they're going to be very confused and probably want to refer me to something, because I wanted to see, like, it was like 28 Days Later, Down syndrome zombies, ? Look, it's fucked up, but I had to know. I was like, do they like not, maybe there's a thing there. I found nothing on it. Like, as far as I'm tracking, they don't discriminate when it comes to like anybody with any kind of disability. So I couldn't also find a movie that had a Down syndrome zombie in it. I was just like checking to see, you know, like cerebral palsy zombie. Like, there's a lot of weird, okay. The things I do for research for you guys, I don't feel good about that. We do also see that these zombies have some level of task prioritization in the fact that they will go for the easy meal over the difficult one. We've seen individuals barricade themselves in a room and the zombies will bang on the door and try and get through for about 4 or 5 seconds. And then if they hear other zombies that happen to be near somebody who's uninfected, they will move on and go on about their day. So I guess long story short, well, not really short because I've been rambling here for a while. When I looked at this as dropped as a bioweapon, I would start with California and New York, and then allow them to take the East and West Coast and just hope for the best as it gets to the Midwest, and hope that people are not able to hold out until winter, which is where the vast majority of the Midwest would be kind of freed from the zombie threat. However, when it comes to the South, I was like back and forth inside my own brain, because people in the South are pretty well-known survivors. That's what they're good at. These zombies can't swim. There's also a lot of water down there, tributaries and things like that. And then somebody, you know, my brain went, oh, what about the gators? What about the gators? Like, that's where my brain went, is like a zombie gets eaten by a gator, gator becomes zombie gator. Like, that's absolutely terrifying. So, like, I don't know which way to go, and the South is densely populated enough that I do genuinely believe that these things would be able to sustain themselves off of the survivors down there. Your best choice for survival is going to be freezing them out in the American Midwest. Now, the government at this point in time would be next to useless, and that's because y'all think, okay, I love my American brothers and sisters, but we are so fucking hard-headed. Like, we think everything the government asks us to do is an infringement on our rights. We're just stuck in that. Like, that's my right. Don't you do that. That's my right. And I love you guys. But the government would try, and they would try things their way, and it would fail miserably. And eventually, I genuinely believe that they would just focus on protecting themselves. Just a CYA. That's where they would be at. They'd be in some underground bunker in NORAD and just waiting for this to blow over. So version 2 is not necessarily a bioweapon. We went with a modified venereal disease. Like a mutated one, you know, and it's not unheard of for viruses and illnesses to take an evolutionary jump. This one did take some time to affect those individuals. And similar to the movie, is it Contagion? Oh, it's Contracted. That's the one. That's the movie. My bad. Contagion is with the monkey. Contracted is that it's a modified STD, but it did take a significant amount of time to take over. Now, this has benefits and drawbacks. The benefit being that you have a little bit more time to react to it as it's happening. The government can put more controls in place, can quarantine people at the right point in time. This one is contracted via sexual intercourse. The downside is you could be having intercourse with somebody and not know that they're infected because it does take time for these symptoms to show themselves. Which personally, I think that is way scarier. Because now you have to quarantine people for long periods of time and you're not allowed to really do anything, any kind of naughty at any point in time because there's a possibility you could end up being a zombie. The other thing is this takes a significantly longer time to affect people and a significantly longer time to have them die off. The Midwest is a lot easier to take because let's say someone does the naughty, things blow up in their town and they're like, man, I need to get the hell out of here. And they head to Billings, Montana and they're like, man, I'm glad I'm safe. And then all of a sudden they start having symptoms, but they hide their symptoms because humans suck. I give this one a less than 0% chance that they're able to actually quarantine this effectively. And these types of zombies, for at least a little while, they remain kind of there with it. So they can feed themselves, they can dress warmer, they can, hydrate properly. They can do all of these things before they lose complete mental control. Yeah, so this one has a significantly higher probability of being able to squeak out of any quarantine zones or protected areas or anything else like that. So individuals leaving those areas would have to quarantine for a time period of a couple of weeks to see if they start showing symptoms. And if they do start showing symptoms, we're gonna Canada them. We'll just go with that. Before anyone's like, oh, Canada's not that bad. Hold on. World War I, we already talked about that one, but World War II, they got a bunch of Germans captive and they're like, well, we don't know what to do with them. We don't have the facilities. Okay, and they just tried to turn the Germans into zombies. You know what I'm saying? Like Romero-style zombies. Well, I guess that about wraps it up. So without further ado, do not give in to the 22 a day. Every single one of you are amazing. If you'd like to support the channel, please go to habituallinecrosser.com, get yourself some merch, maybe buy me a beer. So, with that being said, hope you have a very happy and safe Halloween, and hope to see you guys here next time. Play me out!